in Oklahoma. It's in Haskell County. It has a population of about 152 people.
Echko is a Marvel show on Netflix.
Echko is a reunion of lots of the cast of Reservation Dogs.
Echko is deeply American Indian.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fallingtower's Watch the First podcast, the podcast in which we watch the first episode of a series so that you don't have to.
But you still can.
Probably should. Today, you may have guessed, we're doing a review of Marvel's Echko. First episode pronounced Chafa, is that right?
Chafa, correct.
Great. What a relief. We have a very special guest today. We are super excited. Professor Courtney Lewis is here. She's Duke University's own. She's an associate professor of cultural anthropology and inaugural director of the Native American Studies Initiative. We are so happy to have you. Thanks for joining in, Courtney.
I am so excited to be here.
Oh, that's weird.
We're excited to have you here. Yeah.
Muhammad must have lied to you then. No, we're going to have a great time. This is another show by Marvel, and the show is called Echko. Everybody, if you are watching along, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, please give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate that. So, first things first, everybody, April is new stuff. All new shows, anything that's new and hot or cold, but just new. All right. You're going to say something, Muhammad?
I said we didn't say who we are.
That's true. This is a new format.
New format.
Yes.
Duke University's own. Of course, everybody knows their favorite vice provost for academic affairs. It's Dr.
I was worried when you were going to cut it off there. Like,
It's
oh man,
true.
the vice provost is going to be mad at me. Always a pleasure to be on Fallingtower's Watch the First of Things.
My name's Ryan T. Husk, and it's a pleasure for me to be on Fallingtower's Watch the First of Things too. However, it's time to get to work, and Muhammad knows where we go from here.
So we're in a predicament, the section we call it at least. So this is where we predict what each other might have thought of this show after seeing it without giving away whether we liked it or not. This is Ryan's favorite part of the show, by the way.
It is my favorite part, but I'm actually dreading it this time because this is going to be difficult for me to make predictions without giving away my own opinion for the first time. Usually that's not hard. It's very fun, and I dream about it. So, Muhammad, I predict you like Marvel, okay? You like Marvel. You like DC too, weirdly. And and you're a glass half full guy. You're a beam of sunshine. You like stuff. You're a good guy. And I believe you have seen a lot of the Marvel shows. So you already kind of know what's going on in this world. And I predict that you enjoyed this show. I predict you're going to be right around like a 7.5 or 8. I think you're going to be pretty high on it. Professor Courtney Lewis. I predict, based on no knowledge of your Marvel fandom, I predict that you watch some Marvel, but you're kind of busy saving the world yourself as a superhero yourself. So, heroine, I guess it would be, I don't know. So the point is, I think you're going to like this for the Native American representation. And because there's a lot of it. It's not just a Native American actor. It takes place in that kind of world. I think you're going to like that. I think you're going to be fine with the show as a whole. I think you're going to give it somewhere around the same as Dr. Noor here, around the 7 to 8 mark. But those are my predictions. What do you think, Dr. Noor?
So for Ryan, I mean, I know you like Marvel shows in general. I know you frequently picked Marvel shows for this show, so that's a good hint. I think actually, I don't see anything that was in. I didn't see anything in the show that I think you would dislike. I mean, I think there's elements I think you would think could have been improved upon, but I don't think there's anything you're like, I didn't like blah, or something like that. So I think overall you're gonna be pretty positive. I'd say above 6.5. I don't want to get too specific there, like between 6.5 and 10, like I don't know where, but somewhere above 6.5. Courtney. So you obviously, I think you actually, I remember you saying before that you actually know a lot of the cast from Reservation Dogs. I don't know if you know the ones who are actually in this show, like the ones who crossed over or not. Maybe you certainly spent a lot of time in Oklahoma, so you know the context very well. I think you're going to be quite positive. I'd actually say higher. I'd say like 8 to possibly even higher than that. So those are my predictions. How about you, Courtney?
Whoa.
Bold
And I
predictions.
predict you've seen the whole thing too.
Bold predictions.
He is bold.
So I'm going to say for my vice provost that based similarly on Ryan, with the knowledge of Marvel, enjoying Marvel, also knowing a bit about this kind of world, I would also say like a 7 plus. With Ryan, I agree with you as well, Mohammed, that I think I'm thinking like 6 plus with Ryan, just because of the it's kind of it's an interesting episode, I think, and we'll talk about the reasons. I'm just using the word interest. I don't want to give away things, so I'm just
That's
going to leave it
okay.
at
Interesting is vague enough.
Yeah, I'm going to keep that vague. So it's an interesting episode, and I think because it's kind of quirky in a couple of ways, that yeah, I'm going to stick with 6 plus for Ryan. Yeah.
All right, everybody, you got some hints. Were they helpful hints or were they not helpful? Were they red herrings? Make your predictions now. Do you think I like this show? Do you think Dr. Mohammed Noor? What about Professor Courtney Lewis? Did they like this show? Did they hate it? Are they curmudgeons? What's their problem? Let us know in the comments below or in the live chat. Make your predictions. Take your time. No rush. While you're typing away, Dr. Noor is going to buy us a little bit of time by telling us what this show is even about.
I will try to give a summary. In Oklahoma in 2007, young Maya's mom is killed in an accident because someone cuts the brakes to her truck. Maya also loses a leg in this accident. Maya and her dad move to New York City, and he gets her to learn karate. When she's a young adult, someone kills Maya's dad too, and she gets hired by Kingpin Wilson Fisk to take care of his enemies, including Daredevil. However, things change when Hawkeye tells Maya that Fisk was actually responsible for her dad's death. Maya shoots Fisk in the face, and months later, she's still being pursued by his people. She returns to her hometown to get help while avoiding a childhood friend. They stitch her up, but she also wants help fighting Fisk's people, and that's more than the locals want to do. At the very end, we find out that maybe Fisk is actually still alive.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Excellent. So now, everybody, you got an idea of what this show is even about. Mohammed is getting his, what are those? Clear. Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's right.
No, he's getting his fists of fury ready because he knows what's next. What do we have next, Mohammed?
This is the section I like to call the Expectation. This is where we spend a little bit of time talking about what we expected before watching the show, still without giving away whether we liked it. A lot more time what we actually what we actually got as we actually watched this show. Or as Ryan likes to say, far more eloquently, we like to compare and contrast what we expected with what we actually got.
I love this segment too.
That's my favorite.
All right, so first, what we expected. Dr. Noor, before you watched this first episode of Echko, what did you expect, if anything?
So I had not seen it before we were assigned to watch it for this, and I knew that the main character was deaf, and I knew that Wilson Fisk was in it. I'm a big fan of Wilson Fisk in general as a villain. I think he is like a brilliant villain, and I think Vincent D'Onofrio, or however you say his last name, plays him brilliantly. Really? Yeah. Oh, I think he's excellent at this. I actually didn't know Daredevil was in it, but we obviously see that right here. In terms of the specific plot, nothing at all. Nothing at all. I didn't even know that there were. Well, actually, we'll get into the specifics, but I'll leave it at that.
Oh, I did not realize that was Vincent. Amazing. What about yourself, Professor Lewis? What did you expect before watching this first episode, if anything?
So I had seen Hawkeye. So I knew a little bit about what was coming with Echko. I knew about the overlap that we were going to see right at the beginning. I also knew that we are not supposed to like this character, right? We're not
Oh.
supposed to like Echko going into it. That was something that although I haven't read the comics, I deliberately came to the show with as little information as possible on pretty much every level. I knew the basics of the anti-villain. I knew the Hawkeye overlap from watching that. Um, and I also knew some of the casting characters because from the beginning, it was in all of my feeds, right? It's all
Mm.
over my native Insta feeds, my Facebook feeds. So I knew the cast, but I deliberately kept my info low because I wanted to be surprised. I wanted to come in with as few expectations as possible because with American Indian representation in media, I'm kind of in this double bind of having both very low expectations about what I'm going to see, but also knowing that people behind this, I had very high expectations. So I was like, nope, I'm just going to come into it as blind as possible and just see what happens.
Excellent. Can you believe this is her first time on the show? That's really good.
No, that was brilliant.
I know.
I actually didn't know this was. I didn't even know even after watching the show that this was seated in Hawkeye. Like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
Well, I'll tell all y'all what I expected, if anything. Nothing. So look, I liked Marvel comics when I was a little rascal. I like the Marvel movies.
Mhm.
However, I've been consistently disappointed with Marvel television shows.
Mhm.
And I feel like just about every single Marvel show we have done on this particular show, I've watched the first
Mhm.
episode, thought it was okay, and never watched another episode after that. Like practically all of them.
That's true. I was trying
So,
to think of an exception, and I think you're right.
but I didn't really even know that Echko was Marvel until like the night
Mhm.
before or something. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, Muhammad, is this Marvel? Okay, cool. Because I don't remember that character. I remember the name once we mentioned Marvel. I was like, oh, I do remember
Mhm.
there was a character named Echko, but I didn't really know anything about her. So going in pretty blind, but excited about another Marvel show, even if I don't really care for Marvel shows. I like Marvel
Mhm.
in general and superhero stuff. So that's what we expected. Here's the tough part. Dr. Noor. Oh,
Mhm.
everybody at home, pencils down. Finish up your predictions. We're about to tell you what we actually got. What did you actually get, Dr. Noor?
I liked it. I liked it. So I have a lot to say, and I'll just go through it fairly quickly. But then I'll save a fair bit for the middle part. Um, it definitely was a very full show. Like, oh my gosh, there was a lot happening. I
Mhm.
had to actually like the summary I just gave you there. Even that skipped a lot of details because there was just a lot that happened over the course of that hour. Like, okay.
Mhm.
I thought the fight choreographs were great. I mean, I often don't like those, but for somehow in this show, like, I thought they were exceptionally good. Like, oh, this is usually those I kind of almost tune out, but that I thought was really good. There was almost too much to keep track of, I have to say, at some point sometimes, because
Mhm.
there were things that I was trying to figure out afterwards, which to some extent
Yeah.
maybe there are things that are seeded in later episodes. Like, for example, in the scene where Echo shot Wilson Fisk in the face, he was clearly hurt before that. Like, so what happened like right before that scene? It was a little puzzling. So there's a lot of questions opening. I have a note here saying why was William killed? That's obviously something we'll talk more about too. This is something I like in general about Marvel, is more so than DC, with the exception of Batman. There's a lot of gray of good and bad. So this comes back to the comment that Professor Lewis said earlier in
Mhm.
the context of the anti-hero there. It's very great. I like seeing the MCU connections. I definitely liked very diverse cast, which is something we don't see
Mhm.
Native American representation very often in Marvel shows. So this is pretty
Yeah.
amazing. There's good. I like the representation of the sort of non-auditory action scenes. I actually found that quite creative. I'm like, oh, interesting, because they cut out the sound, but then like they'd have these little
Mhm.
kind of bits so you'd almost feel it rather than see it. The things I didn't love, and this is just for me personally, like it was dark. It was so dark. I mean, I actually would have been happy with like a few
Mhm.
more happy tidbits here and there because there weren't very many
Yeah.
happy tidbits. It was just dark. I think for me personally, I would have been happier if they had made Maya a little bit more sympathetic. Because I mean,
Yeah.
she came across not that positively, which for a main character for me is a little bit tough. I mean, I don't mind somebody who's very mixed, but I mean, she came off like beyond the mixed point, at least for me. So those are things I would have
Mhm.
done differently. But overall, I mean, absolutely enjoyed it. I was very captivating throughout. I never once looked at my watch the whole time we were watching it. So
Mhm.
I'll pass the baton to Courtney Lewis.
A lot of similar things here. So one of the big things was that, as I said before, I knew who was going to be in this. And for folks that are kind of steeped in American Indian media and representation, the list of cast in this show is absolutely stellar. And every single Native person portrayed on the show, with very few exceptions, is Native. And
Nice.
that's highly unusual. So I knew that these were folks, especially folks like Graham Greene, Tantu Cardinal, who have been in this industry their entire lives doing this work. Um, we have Chask Spencer, who was starring in a certain vampire movie. We have some of the cast from Reservation Dogs in here, Zahn McLaren, surprise cameos. Dallas Goldtooth comes later, Tatanka Means, Jana, just the list goes on of these folks. And then some folks that they were pulling in specifically for cameos. Geraldine Keams was the star of Outlaw Josie Wales,
Oh,
being back brought in. Cody Lightning was young Victor in Smoke Signals. So knowing these things and knowing the cast, it was actually pretty incredible, like right from the get-go, and to have these cast members foregrounded, and then to have a woman anti-villain, a Native woman, anti-hero coming in. It started out very strong just from that kind of foundation for me. I think that, as I was talking with people and asking them about what they thought about the first episode, even I was a little confused as to what was happening. It's been a long time since I had watched Hawkeye, and I had to kind of refresh. I knew the main key points, but I think knowing a bit more about Hawkeye, I think knowing the background of Echo's future relationship with Daredevil makes those scenes a little less convoluted. And if you don't know that, so if you're coming in kind of blind to American Indian representation and kind of blind to these connections, I think that can be a little confusing because they went fast. It was a 50-minute episode, but they went through that really quickly. Um, we can talk about some other things later. Just from watching it, I knew the representation was pretty accurate. I knew that they had done consulting work, deep consulting work with the Choctaw Nation. They have native writer Stephen Paul Judd as executive producer, I believe. So that really shines through when you have an eye for this. And there's a few more things that we can talk about as far as her character and how it's different than the comic and how they changed
Hmm.
it for this series. Um, so I think the other, and it's a little convoluted because it's linking two worlds, right? So it's kind of this middle piece between Hawkeye and Daredevil. And they kind of assume that you're coming in with that. And for her character, one of the things that stuck out to me coming from a Native perspective is that, again, kind of broadly, people aren't supposed to like her because she has a huge arc coming, right? But for some Native folks, there's another element here, which is that the concept and practice of selfishness and self centeredness for some Native people marks this severance from community and
mm,
relations, right? And it's considered some of the most dangerous or most damaging behavior a person can practice. So when she goes back to Tamaha, the Choctaw town, and she's coming back with this kind of self-serving energy, that's profoundly impactful, right? So I think from a non-native perspective, you're like, yeah, she's kind of an ass. But from a native perspective, we see this as a very damaging severance. So yeah, and I think that there was a couple of laughs, a couple of oofs that we can talk about later as we kind of dig in a bit. But I think overall, they did a fantastic job. Some of my favorite scenes were watching the world through her eyes as a child, which I think gives us a lot of insight into her trauma. And the scenes where they actually cut the sound, right? Very important. Um, all right, so I'll pause there, else I'm going to talk the rest of the time. So I'm going to
That was
pass the
brilliant.
baton to Ryan.
Yeah, it's fun to hear you talk, though. Feels like I'm listening to a professor.
That's very coincidental because that's what I am.
So I'll tell all y'all what I actually got. What I got was a show that confused the fuck out of me because I didn't know that you're supposed to know all these other shows.
Yeah.
So coming in from the perspective of somebody that hasn't seen other shows, it was a lot of misses for me because,
Sure.
you know, I feel like the
Yeah.
show needs to do two things, right? It needs to be a good pilot, which is going in blind. But the icing on the cake is if it's connected to all these other shows. That's when it's like really good for the fans. But if it focuses on that icing of being really good for the people that already know everything and it's forgetting the first time viewers, then it's not bringing in any new fans, i.e. me. But I love, obviously I love the representation, but beyond that, I love that where it takes place. I love that it takes me to a different world, a different culture, something new, something different that I can sink my teeth into, that I can be curious about, that people like Professor Courtney Lewis could be like, I know what that is. And I could be like, what is that? I want to know. You know, that stuff is really cool. That sparks our interest, that enriches our lives. It, you know, decentralizes power structures by giving someone else some work, giving a different location some work. I love that kind of stuff. So it's very split for me in that regard that, and I assumed they were doing all of the good things that Courtney said because it felt authentic, you know, like just a guess. But when you're watching it, it felt like they were all Native Americans. It felt like they consulted to do it right. Disney's not going to throw some trash out and be like, I don't care who we offend. I'm assuming they did their work and it's nice to know that they did, but that's what it felt like. So it felt genuine, which is really cool. So I really enjoyed that. Other than that, yeah, there were just these big gaps and I kept thinking, did my video skip ahead? And so I honestly kept checking, like, did I hit a button? Did I do something? And then I realized, oh, I guess maybe these blanks have already been filled in other shows. I don't know, but I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer for me. I want to know what happened. But anyway, that's what I got. You know, very 50-50 for me. So Muhammad, I really liked, I didn't know that was Vincent. I didn't even realize. I thought the acting was fantastic as well. Muhammad, did you guys have a favorite character?
Favorite character. I mean, I'm so biased to Wilson Fisk because I mean I love the Daredevil movies. I'm so biased to him, and I don't want to not be fair to the new characters here. I mean, if I take him out, I think that's not quite fair. I guess I'm also biased to the guy who plays William too, because I thought he was fantastic in Reservation Dogs.
Who's William?
That was the dad.
That was my favorite character.
Yeah,
and I wish
mean,
he got more.
He was the police chief in Reservation Dogs, and it was just like he was so good in that show. So I came in already like, oh, it's him! I love him.
Yes, John McClernand.
I did not know he was going to say. I was just like, I was like, that guy's going places. I didn't realize he already has been places. I was like, he's really good.
He's been to so many places. Yeah.
It's hard to filter out for like the preconceptions with like those two, especially.
What about you, Courtney?
So I think saying Echko is a little too obvious, even though I think what they did, I mean, given that they brought in a new actress who actually has partial deafness and is native to play this role, that was incredible. And that I think also makes it a little too easy to point. So I'm going to do the Muhammad thing and say, I'm going to take that off the table because she's already getting the spotlight. But I'm going to throw something strange out there and say that it's not one character, but a relationship that I really enjoyed with this, which is between Graham Greene and Tantu Cardinal, Scully and Chula. who we know
Bonnie's
from the
parents.
first episode exactly
Yeah.
were together. They have their own arc across, and I think that we don't get a lot of elder representation, and especially elders as full humans who have lived these lives and had these relationships, and they joke around and they're working through these family dynamics. And as that unfolds, I just felt really drawn to it because we get that so little, especially in something like Marvel and superhero films, right? So I found what they were doing together in it very compelling. Yeah.
You know what I
But it's
wanted?
also really hard to choose.
What I wanted more of, but we didn't get, is I wanted to see more with Bonnie, like the grown-up version of Bonnie. Which actually, I was kind of like, wait, is that the girl
Was
who
that her
played
playing
Laura?
basketball? I'm
Takes a
assuming, right?
second.
Yeah.
In the fire department. Yeah. And that was the other thing. If you had subtitles going, there were a lot of things. There's a lot of information that you don't get without the subtitles.
Ooh.
So you know when it's
Totally.
Kingpin, you know when it's Bonnie in this scene. So yeah, it clears it up a little bit, but not everything.
And you know what? I didn't mind the main character being hard-edged. I didn't even realize
Oh, yeah.
that she was unlikable. I just thought, okay, that's the main character. She's had a rough life. She's tough. We've seen a lot of characters like this that are just kind of like, start off really acrid, really sandpapery, really tough. I just assume, all right, so she's going to have an arc. She's going to grow. She's going to get better. She's going to save the cat. Everything's fine. It's funny. It didn't even register that she's supposed to be unlikable. It's just like, okay, cool. I was just enjoying the acting and the settings, to be honest. But Professor Lewis, you were teasing a few things, saying we could talk about that later. Did you want to bring up a couple of those right now?
I do actually. So let me talk just about some trivia that I had flagged for this. So Tamaha is a town in Oklahoma. It's in Haskell County. It has a population of about 152 people.
Wow.
So it does have this very small town feel, which is one of the kind of relates to one of the oof scenes I had in this. But her character is really interesting because in the comic, so again, I came in without knowledge, and then after I watched this, I went back because I also teach a comics course, and I specifically had not taught this comic for reasons. But her character in the comic is not Choctaw. Her character is Blackfeet and Cheyenne, which is way different culturally. So Disney, because they had these writers on staff that were located in Oklahoma, so the Oklahoma Choctaw Cherokee writers decided to change her from Blackfeet Cheyenne to Choctaw because they had Choctaw voices in the room already, which was really interesting. And I haven't talked to my Blackfeet friends to see how they feel about this, or my Cheyenne folks, but the Choctaw absolutely were overall thrilled. And there is a website that I highly encourage people to go to that the Choctaw put together, which is echo.choctawnation.com, where they actually go through and talk about the cultural tidbits of what's happening, right? So the story that opens this episode is the Choctaw creation history. So they actually talked with the Choctaw. It is telling an accurate story. That's one of the questions that my students and people ask is, did they make that up or is that true? And that is, that's what the story, the history that the Choctaw Nation wanted to tell. So the website goes into that even more. There's a video of the chief raving about the show.
Nice.
I won't give away anymore because some stuff comes later. But the other really interesting thing that they changed, and this is super fundamental, is her powers. So her power originally in the comic was an echo, a mimicry of other people's powers, right? That hence the name Echko, right? And that's coming from a women's superhero standpoint is a little shady because you're only deriving power from other people. Like your power is essentially reliant on other people's powers, right?
Also, just to add, there are a couple other superheroes that have a similar kind of power where they're just taking somebody else's power or something. So I think it might have been a good thing that they changed that up.
I think it is too. And in this one, she's drawing the power, and I think in later episodes they specifically refer to this. Um, she's drawing the power from her lineage, from her ancestors, and they phrase it as an echo coming down through generations. So they
Very
Love that.
nice.
fundamentally
Very good.
change
That's
this,
hers.
which is great. There is some criticism that this kind of turns her into a mystical native ancestor thing, right? A mystical native power. I can see that too, but also I do like the idea of making more clear the connection, the very direct connection that many American Indian people have with ancestors, which is that they're not over there, they're right here. They're still family right at this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the show pulls that together really well in that respect.
Can I just add to that? When I
Yeah.
first started watching it, at the very beginning, it's showing mystical things. I was like, what the
Yeah.
is going on
Yes.
here? What's happening? And I kind of started to have
Yes.
that point of view that you're mentioning. And then I realized I was like, what? Wait a second. Marvel has alien superheroes. Marvel has
Totally.
Yes.
monsters and dragon superheroes. And then I realized I was like, okay, this is not even close to the zaniest thing they've done. So I don't think that's a knock against it at all. I think that's you
Right.
just realize that you're watching a sci-fi fantasy type of universe where
Yeah.
you know aliens are coming down, people are morphing into other things, you know, like yeah,
Yes.
that's nothing. That's fine. Muhammad was pissed though.
Oh, I was curious. No, I
I
wasn't.
see
I
that.
thought it was
I
great.
see
I
it.
was a little
Yeah.
confused at first. I thought maybe we're on another planet or something. Like, what's going on here? Does this start
Yes.
somewhere else outside of Earth? And then when
Yes.
the skin peeled off, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Got it. I see what's
Yeah,
happening.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, those great effects
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Well,
And I
Muhammad,
think there are a lot of, oh, sorry.
please go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I think that there are a lot of moments in here that people who are deeply steeped in American Indian representation would recognize, just these kind of small moments. And that opening isn't going to be legible to most folks, but for the Choctaw people watching it, they will know immediately what's happening. And I think there's a power in that. And Disney definitely has a lot of making up to do vis-a-vis Pocahontas. So I think what they're doing now is pretty great.
Yeah. Did you have some favorite moments, Muhammad?
Yeah, I had some that I flagged as either like really either funny or really sad. So like the moment, the one that killed me, like I actually choked up. It was so awful. That was when Maya, as a girl, when she was saying like it's talking about it being the accident was her fault because she insisted on going out. I was like, oh, that was like stabbed me. Oh, that was so painful to watch that because
Yeah.
I just imagine a kid feeling that way. Like, oh, I can't even imagine a worse thing than that. Some of the funny moments I had though, when that guy was really horrible to her and then she beat him up, and then later he comes back again and she's like, "You again?" I thought that was very funny. In the skating rink when they brought in the mortician to help when she first says, "I don't think we're embalming you today," and then there was something about like this is the person we call it for to be fixed or gone, and she's like, "Which one is it for me?" She's like, "Let's start with fixed." So those were some of the funny or dark moments for me, just in terms of things I enjoyed. I mean, yeah, I actually thought the choreography was really good. I did
I
like some
agree.
of I did like some of the family scenes too, like when the cousin showed up at the house. I mean, I was like, oh, I like this. This is really you can just kind of see the connection of everybody there. That seemed really nice. And also the argument there at the top of the water tower when he was talking about how upset her friend Bonnie's going to be about not seeing her. I was like, "Aw." I really want that was something I really wanted to see. I wanted to see this, them at least run into each other or something like that. I was very eager for that scene, which I assume will happen in like the next episode, I guess, but or maybe not. I don't know.
I was hoping that she was going to be nicer to the cousin. I do remember that. I was like, well, this guy's so happy to see you and you don't care.
Yeah.
He was
And
sweet.
that was a little rough for me. The Bonnie thing, I'm like, oh, there's something there. I'm sure that's going to work out. But I was like, yeah, be nice to the cousin. He's a fun dude, and his dog almost looks CGI to me for a second. Was it? Like, there was a moment where I was like,
I felt the same thing.
But whatever. I was happy about it. I liked him too. I think I liked all of the characters. There wasn't anybody that I didn't care for. Yeah, pretty good all around. Uh, Professor Lewis, did we miss any funny moments that maybe you caught that maybe we might not have?
Um, Not as many and not funny moments in this one. I think if you're looking for funny moments that you're probably going to miss if you're not um, somehow steeped in American Indian, but especially Oklahoma American Indian culture, is more Reservation Dogs.
Yeah.
That that show had so many profound and small moments that were hilarious that I was laugh crying through most of that. This Echko is more just crying for
Oh,
the reasons Mohammed said, and also some others. Um, but for me, there was some kind of the more touching scenes. Something as innocuous as them sitting around that fire outside of the house, having that chat where they're telling slightly bawdy stories as adults and laughing, like that felt very familiar to me, right? So I definitely had like some connection where I was like, oh, yes, I see this, like I feel this. And again, seeing kind of the world through the child's eyes um, was really impactful for me. Um, the oops scene I had, I think,
yeah.
was less with the native thing. So a lot of times I'm a little skeptical with how the native representation is going to come out. And for this show, I think they overall did well. I didn't have anything where I was super cringe about what they did representationally, but I do have a small qualm with small townness.
Mm.
So if she was going into this small town, first of all, she would have been spotted immediately. Just immediately. It's 150 people. There's no way she's driving in
Yes.
on that motorcycle. I don't care how far away she is. Second, she told her cousin. That's going to come out. He's going to try, but that's a losing path. And then the big one was when she went to the skating rink, which is a public place where her kin are, right? That would have been a 30 seconds until every single person in that town would have known she was there.
Mhm.
Literally 30 seconds. People are texting, Maya's back. Skating rink is now mobbed with Choctaw people. That's just how it's going to happen. Um, I mean, we already saw the other guy texting his buddies. You know, everybody in that rink listening to 80s music also has a phone and they know who she is, even if she's been gone that long. So that was the only scene where I was like, nope, I'm not buying that. Not buying it just from a small town perspective. But honestly, given how well I think they did overall, yeah, I think those are probably my favorite scenes. I'm going to have to admit that I do have a favorite actor, which is
Oh,
Graham Greene. So Graham Greene has been someone that I've been that has his impact along with Gary Farmer on American Indian First Nations representation has just been dedicated his entire career. Just again, I'm going to use the word profound, but seeing him on the screen doing his thing uh, was very joyful for me.
Mm.
I've met him a couple times. He's
oh.
amazing. So he's amazing as a human. He's amazing as an actor. He's paid his dues. He did the Dances with Wolves thing, like main character in that. And now I feel like he actually gets a chance to be his American Indian. I mean, he's First Nations, but his character as opposed to playing someone else's vision. Yeah.
Mhm. Now, everybody at home, Courtney has mentioned a couple times Reservation
Mm-hmm.
Dogs. We did review the first episode of Reservation Dogs. That is episode number 79. So do yourself a favor and check
Mm-hmm.
out WTF episode 79. Our special guest was Roz Stanley. She's pretty fun. So check
That was
that
back with
out.
Michael Kenny Rosenberg. That was before I was on.
Mm-hmm. So
I
you
watched the
should
review
watch
though.
it too. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you already know if we liked it or we
I
didn't.
do.
Here's a hint. We either liked it or we didn't.
How much
So
I had.
I also
Yeah.
wanted to echo what Dr. North said, which is I thought the fight scenes were really good. Fight scenes, okay, cool. Sometimes they're fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes who cares? But the choreography was really good, especially that extended fight scene that was going on. And
Mm-hmm.
there were a couple quips going on here and there. Um, I thought that the ASL going on was cool because,
Yes.
they kind of gave it to certain characters that you would think, okay, they're friends with her, so they have it. They know how to do that. They know how to communicate that way. And others aren't friends with her, so they don't. So I felt like they picked the people and how much they could speak. And again, I thought the dad, I was like, this guy is so good at acting because he's acting while speaking ASL, but he's also acting while speaking English. I mean, he's doing double acting. So I'm like, there's no way this is not some kind of seasoned actor, because he was it was just, I was really impressed with him and with everybody kind of pulling that off, and Disney or whomever is really behind this, pulling that off in a way that wasn't distracting, because if somebody's doing this in front of you, you might watch that, but a lot of times the camera would pull away from it a little bit. So we know it's happening. It's been introduced. It's almost like an establishing shot. I thought that was very well done. Maybe the best I've seen with regards to that. So I was very happy about that personally.
Love it.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about Professor Courtney Lewis a little bit.
I think we should too. Let's do it, shall we?
So, Professor Lewis, you've been at Duke now about 2 years, is that right?
I'm just in my 4th semester. So almost 2 years. Almost 2 years. Yes, a little over a year and a half now. Yeah.
Well, you want to tell folks like what a little bit about your research and a little bit about your teaching, and then we'll talk about outside activities after that.
Yeah. So my research has a few different trajectories. My background is actually economics background. So my bachelor's and master's are in economics, and then I moved to economic anthropology for my PhD. So my first book looks at American Indian entrepreneurs, specifically small businesses on the Qualla Boundary, which is the homeland of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. So I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, which is the nation in Oklahoma, but I work with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, who are our sibling nation. That's 2 out of 3 of us in North Carolina. The 3rd Cherokee Nation is the United Kituo Band, which is also in Oklahoma. So my work is based in economics, but at heart, I have always been an indigenous nerd. So I've always been drawn and really wanted more American Indian representation in the nerdy realms, and that was very difficult to find, but especially in comic books. And so it was just a few years ago that, because of the extremely diligent efforts of many Native folks coming together, especially Dr. Lee Francis IV, who owns the one and only American Indian comic book store in the world, we began to see this influx of American Indian comics. And by that, I mean comics that were written and or illustrated both by American Indian people. And because of that, I was able to put together an entire comic book class that focused solely on how American Indians represent themselves in these worlds, whether it's a graphic novel of history or sci-fi or fantasy, whether it's a dystopian future or a solar punk utopia. And that is a class that I continue to teach. I'll have a comic book exhibit coming up in 2025 on Duke's campus. This particular piece of beadwork was done by one of my comic book students at the time. Hello, Rosalind, thank you so much, who did this piece for her final project of Aspen and Crawfish. Now, that's like part of the nerdy thing, but I do also want to plug the Indigipop X, which is the original Indigenous Comic-Con and Indigenerd headquarters meeting. So this is a Comic-Con specifically focusing on Indigenous, nerdy, comic-y deliciousness. It is this year, it's April 12th through 14th. It is located at yes, there we go. It is coming up quick. And it is located at the First Americans Museum, which is a fairly new museum. So you are not only steeped in a critical mass of indigenous excellence in pop culture, but you're also in the First Americans Museum, which is there to represent the Native nations in Oklahoma. So you're getting lots. It is open to the public. Everybody is encouraged to come to this. It's not just for Native people. This is for Native artists, whether they're comic book artists or celebrities, to come and talk about these kind of representational issues. So I will be there once again this year. And I want to give a shout out. Yes.
And if you want to say it's on that, you're going to be there,
Yeah.
and I believe you're getting a big honor there.
Ooh.
So I did find out they're holding their inaugural awards ceremony, so the inaugural IPX Awards, and I have just been told that I am getting Educator of the Year at these awards. So thank you so much, and shouting out to all the folks there, Lee Francis, Tom Ferris, Kristen Gentry, that are all putting this together. But yeah, do come. And that's something that's also kind of a side project of my research, is really amplifying the voices of indigenous. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And well deserved. The Educator of the Year is a huge deal. That's amazing. And the first one too, the inaugural.
It is. It's the intersection of my people. So it means the most. It's the indigenous, nerdy, geeky culture. There's no higher honor.
That's fantastic.
They got to call it the Professor Lewis Award. Going forward.
Professor Lewis, in the introduction too, we mentioned that you're running the Native American Initiative here at Duke. So, I mean, you want to talk a little bit about your outstanding work in that regard? I've seen some of it, but ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. So last July, I launched the Native American Studies Initiative at Duke University. It's the first of its kind, specifically to do a few different things. One, we want to support research for Indigenous studies, making sure that professors know how to bring Indigenous studies into their own work, but also supporting more of these kind of studies. They tend to be underfunded relative to other studies, but also increasing visibility of American Indian and Indigenous people across campus, and then reaching out to community and beyond. So we sponsor talks, speaking gigs. In April, we are working with the First Nations Film and Video Festival. They will be doing a shorts festival. So these are the kind of things that we're bringing to campus to make sure that all of our students and the community, because all of these events are open to anyone, can really come in and see these kind of representations and just the product of what American Indian, First Nations, Indigenous people are doing right now. So lots of fun things going on. 2025, 2026 is going to be the year of American Indian pop culture. We will have an entire exhibit just on American Indian comics. We will also have a large gallery exhibit at the National Museum of Art that's going to include many top artists. That will be the same fall of 2025. And then the spring of that year, spring of 2026, we will have a pop culture artist in residence. That's a secret, so I can't say who that is yet. And bringing in a production team that is doing a native version of Grease called Bear Grease. So it's all about kind of highlighting the modernity, the contemporary nature of this pop culture work, Indigenous worldviews, and frankly, the joy of indigeneity and how we express that joy. Because much like with Echko, a lot of times American Indians are portrayed as very impoverished, very stoic, very sad people. So part of this is showcasing just the joy of it. Yeah.
So where can people follow you if they want to follow you on like social media or websites or stuff?
So the top ones you can find me at. So one, please go to the websites that I've listed. I do have my own website as well. I did just start an Insta account, so I have that. Please ignore the fact that there's very little there. And that one is, I will put it, it's Jalagi PhD, which is THALAGI PhD. So that's Cherokee for Cherokee.
Oh, I love it.
Nice.
Right. So
Meta.
it's basically Cherokee PhD. And just a shout out to my Cherokees. Sio Nagata, Sio Ganali. Hey y'all, I see you out there. So please ignore that. More is coming. I am not on Twitter as much anymore. Do have a Facebook account just with my name. But definitely way more is going to be posted to Insta starting this semester. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, Ryan, I think it's time for the bottom line.
Yeah, a hawk just landed on my fence. Like right then. That's kind of cool.
That's because we're talking about native things.
I think
it tends to happen. It's okay.
The hawk wants to listen in.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
They do. Yeah.
Okay, so the final two questions of the show, everybody knows they're called the terrible twos.
Bottom line.
Question number one is, Dr. Muhammad Noor, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give this first episode of Echko?
Yeah, so I'm speaking just for me in terms of enjoyment. So again, really liked the choreography, really liked the representation, really liked, honestly, the story. But for me, it was dark. It was very dark.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I would give it, balancing all those things out, I would give it a 7.5. Still a very solid score. But I mean, if there had just been a little bit more humor sprinkled in, or a little bit more things like that, it could have actually gone very high. But that for me is, I remember at the end, I just felt like a weight on me. Maybe it was what they wanted. Maybe what they walked away with.
They're like, mission accomplished, bro.
Mission accomplished.
What about you, Courtney? Scale of 1 to 10, this first episode.
So I have to cheat a little bit and give two separate scores. So if I was coming to this with zero native background, right? And just as a nerd, maybe someone who hadn't had this context, the show, I think, would have been confusing enough that I probably would have given it the same as Muhammad, like 7+, because I liked what they were doing there, but I also felt a little unstable as to what was going on. I mean, I did know these things, so I was able to pull them together very quickly. But I think without that, it would have been a little bit more difficult to follow. As a Cherokee from Oklahoma, as someone who knows what I'm looking for in this, I have to give it a much higher score, because what they did with this, and let me rephrase, if I am excited and clapping while the end credits are going because of the actors, the consulting crew, the musicians, that's something that as a native person, I didn't think would happen in my lifetime. Like, Reservation Dogs aside, seeing a Marvel superhero who's foregrounded, a native woman, seeing this cast, seeing this representation was just so groundbreaking that it's got to be a 9. The only reason it's not a 10 is, one, because of Reservation Dogs, but also there is an element of knowing too much, right? So when you know that much about native things, you can kind of see a little bit here and there. But as a Cherokee, as a native scholar, solid 9 for the work they put into this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll use the second one because you are everything you described.
Exactly. That's what yeah. That's not the if, right? The other one's the if. So for me, well, obviously for me, like I said, I loved the Native American aspect. I loved being put in there, especially. That's what I like the best. I like to be taught things by just being immersed in it. I like to be there. And then it creates questions for me, right? And then I get curious and I ask them and I look them up and all that, which is all great. As far as the episode itself, I didn't think it was very good. I didn't think the episode was good. I thought the mindfulness behind it, the research behind it, what they did, why they did it and all that was great. So I was going to give it a 4.5, but hearing how much extra stuff was put into it, I'm like, all right, I got to bump that up, because then my suspicions as to how much effort they put into it are being confirmed, that it's not just a suspicion. They actually did do the things that I assumed they were doing. So I'm bumping it up significantly to a 6. So
that's a big bump.
It is a big bump. But I also feel like, boy, it would have been just, I wish they would have just done, maybe if I'd seen all the Marvel stuff, I would have been like, oh, this was great. But for somebody, if they're trying to bring in a new audience or a new group, they're watching it, they're just gonna be like, oh, I guess the episode itself was okay, but I was a little left wanting. But so, I can't give it a 4 or 5 because I want people to support it and I want people to watch it. So I got to give it a 6. But that was question number 1, everybody. Question number 2 is really the big one. For the purposes of this podcast, we all had to watch the first episode of Echko. But now that the podcast is over and we're free to move about the internet, Dr. Muhammad Noor, would you, of your own volition, watch the second episode?
I would. One of these days, I'm going to actually say it before you. I would watch the second one, yeah. I have not yet done so, but I definitely would. There were enough things in there, which even though it kind of bothered me at the time, like not understanding things, there were enough things that drew me in, like, I want to know, why was Wilson Fisk all beaten up? How did he survive? And so there were enough, and how did William die? I mean, there's enough things that drew me in that, I would totally watch the second one. I don't know when I'm going to do it because I'm doing a lot of other things, but hopefully sometime.
What about you, Professor Lewis?
Absolutely. There was no not watching the rest of this series for many reasons. And I'm very glad I did. I mean, just because you're going to doesn't mean that you're glad that you did it. And I can say both. Sure. I was definitely going to watch the whole series, but also I'm very glad I did, because the way the series is laid out, and I don't want to give spoilers to anybody, but the way they lay this out episodically ended up being really interesting on a few levels. And I think that the character development alone is really interesting to watch. In addition to the rest of the media, the American Indian representation that comes with this.
All right, here comes the toughie, though, everybody. Man, if I just watched that first episode, to be honest, no, I would not. No, I'd be like, all right, that was fine. But just like every other Marvel first episode, I'm just not, it just doesn't do it for me. Like, I haven't watched the second episode of
WandaVision.
Maybe any, did I watch the second episode of WandaVision? I don't think so. I don't think any of them. I think I'm 0 for 10 on all of them. But this is one that I want to encourage people to see, because even if they didn't quite hit a home run, in my opinion, on this first one, I want them to keep trying, and I want them to keep working on that. And the way to do that is by clicking on that button to watch it and boost up those numbers. So I'm going to say that, yes, I would watch it, and I would encourage other people to watch it so we can get more stuff, especially since Professor Lewis says, you should watch it. It gets better, you guys. You're going to love it. Hang in there. So I'm flip-flopping over to a yes, everybody, and you all should do the same.
Woo-hoo.
That's it for us. Can you believe it? 3 yeses. All right. Wow, that was fun. So everybody, if you'd like us to review a new show, in the comments below, type WTF and the show. For example, this would have been WTF Echko on Disney+. And that's it for us. What I'm trying to say is this podcast was enlightening.
That was close to what I was going to say. This podcast was very educational.
This podcast in and of itself was groundbreaking.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time on Falling Towers Watch the First podcast. See you next time. Wait, what do I say? Oh, yeah, Michael Kenyon Rosenberg. I was like, I feel like there's something else we're missing. Don't forget what Mr. Michael Kenyon Rosenberg always likes to say.
Don't forget to be an organ donor, and don't forget to watch the first of things.
All right, freeze frame like Kingpin.
That shitty smile and pretend that